Hello, David Zritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. Okay, not too long ago, we had a discussion, and I had put a few Instagram videos around my reaction as a United States citizen of Queen Elizabeth II passing on. And since then, I've spoken to quite a few people, but I needed to make heads or tails of this. I mean, there's a lot of discussion here to go through. There's both talking about the Queen, talking about the now King, and then, of course, how does James Bond intersect? And I'll tell you, there was a thought process. I had to think to myself, who would I bring on to my show that would be the subject matter expert that when I think about really drinking in the content that has to do with Britain, that has to do with the British citizens, and has to do with the monarchy, I honestly could only think of one person. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Thomas Felix Creighton to the show. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, happy to join you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I don't even know if you know this because we haven't talked about this, but I have become somewhat, this is a strong word, addicted to your podcast,
Oh,
Albion Never Dies.
that's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much. I'm
You,
glad you've been
you
enjoying it.
you look shocked, but let me tell you why. First of all, you have a very calming voice on the podcast. It opens up with the little pan flutes or whatever the heck that is. It's like ooh, doo, 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 doo. So I could be like very stressed out driving to work, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I got a board meeting today," and all of a sudden I hear Thomas go, "Hello, welcome to Albion Never Dies," and then the pan flute plays, but you have this wonderful rhetoric of walking through really good information in a very relaxing way. Have people told you that?
Thank you very much. I mean, I started out my career as a lecturer at the University of Bradford as a lecturer in English, and I've taken that forward in my career ever since. And lots of people have said that they'd like to listen to my voice somewhere. So I thought I'd give the people what they want. I believe that's the first rule of mass media.
All right, and this guy will never say it exactly. Oh, there's going to be tons of Bond quotes. I'm sure of it. So Thomas has not only, obviously been part of, the educational system. He's been a model. He's really into the sartorial Bond. You can see how well and buttoned up he is today. It's Sunday morning for me, so I at least put on a white striped shirt. So do me that. But Thomas, talk to me a little bit of an overview of what we're going to chat about today.
Okay, so obviously the late Queen passed away about a couple of weeks ago now. And of course, it wasn't totally unexpected. We all expected it to happen sometime, but it's always a shock when it happens. You never expect it to be on today. So we'll talk about that. Obviously, as soon as she passes away, King Charles is now king.
Yeah.
So the traditional saying is, the Queen is dead, long live the king. It's been said before in history. Most times in history, it's the king is dead, long live the king. So it is special. We then had the 10 days of mourning. And now, of course, we have King Charles as an uncrowned king, slowly taking on those responsibilities. The longest apprenticeship in history. He has been
Wow.
a prince for what, 70 years? And so now he is King Charles III. And we're waiting, of course, for the coronation, which we anticipate next year. But it's a big constitutional change, right? The majority of Brits today were born in Queen Elizabeth's reign. We remember no other queen.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to pull you onto the show. As a citizen of any other place other than Britain, I wanted to really find out because to me, as a U.S. citizen, this had a major impact on me. This has been my only queen, as strange as that sounds. When someone says Queen something in the United States, you immediately thought of Queen Elizabeth II because she's been around for so many generations. But let's jump into this. And you have, because of course you have, prepared a PowerPoint. But talk to me about what we're looking at right now.
So here we see the connection between the royal family and James Bond. I guess over the last half century or more, almost 60 years, James Bond has become very much the beacon of Englishness, right? So we know Daniel Craig's tenure is at an end, so here's the old Bond. But it's a national discussion who should play him. We don't have that with any other character, like who's going to be the next Hamlet, who's going to be the next Sherlock Holmes. There's not a national debate, but with James Bond, there is a permanent, ongoing debate who should do it, because that person represents Britain. And of course, in a rather more serious constitutional way, that is our monarch. So to see the two kind of icons of Britishness together, well, here we have from the London 2012 Olympics, the Queen and James Bond, and of course, Prince Charles, then Prince Charles, did visit the set of No Time to Die. So we do have that connection.
And is that how it's spelled, Majesties? That's the plural of Majesties?
I did Google it, but I believe that's how it's spelled. I should know.
Because when I saw it, I'm like, where's the Y? But I mean, listen, you're the educator here.
We'll find out in the comments. I believe that's how it's spelled. I did search for this on Google a few times because it looks strange to me.
No,
I don't often see it.
I believe you. I believe you. Well, should we go to the next slide then?
Please do. Please do.
So talk to me about what this is.
So, of course, for Bond fans, we look to the origin of James Bond as 13th of April, 1953, right? So when you look at the prop passport of Daniel Craig's Bond, his birthday is April the 13th. And it shows how important still the publication of Ian Fleming's first novel is. And I have here a picture of the cover that he described. And, of course, that year, the old king passed away and Princess Elizabeth became Queen Elizabeth II. But again, it happens instantaneously upon the death of one monarch, the assumption of the other, and then the crowning comes sometime later. And it can be a small gap or it can be a very long gap. And it was between that gap of the Queen becoming Queen and being crowned that we have Casino Royale come out.
See, so for those playing along at home, for the audience members, let me describe kind of what's happening here, because Thomas has built several layers in here. Not only are we talking about the progression, the chronology of the Queen, but this is also the intersection of Bond. So think about it, as you would have been in London and different places, and Queen Elizabeth is crowned. In your bookstore, you could have walked in for the very first time and you'd be picking this up going, oh, I wonder what this book is, Casino Royale. That boggles the mind of how long she's had her reign for.
Yeah, and it's very generational, right? So, Ian Fleming's Bond kind of does, I hesitate to say there's a generational fight. There is certainly a gap between himself and the older generation. And I feel, when you get a new monarch, it is quite generational. I mean, I've only met a couple of people as I go around, say, cathedrals and so on, who remember the old words, the national anthem. So one gentleman came up to me, oh, I do remember being taught as a young boy the new national anthem, God Save the Queen, as opposed to God Save the King. So now, of course, we're relearning our national anthem.
All right, so I have a question, because I did this in a video that hasn't even come out yet. But I was talking about, the king, and then I was using on His Majesty's Secret Service, and I messed up. Like I said, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, because we're so indoctrinated and trained. As obviously a British citizen, are you having trouble sort of reconnecting the dots here a little bit?
Yes, and I believe that's relatively normal. I remember older generations telling me how funny it was to change from king to queen, and what a big change it was. So you see somebody's generation by their slip, essentially.
That's amazing. All right, let's go to the next one. Wow.
Yeah, so here we have kind of a 10-year anniversary photograph of Queen Elizabeth II, and it is in her 10th year that we get the first Bond movie, Dr. No, coming out. So again, tying together perfectly the origin of the literary James Bond and the origin of the cinematic James Bond. So
again, you're hitting me with impact waves. By the way, we're recording this on a Sunday morning. I've got it's not very British. It's ginger tea, which is not British at all. What are you drinking right now, by the way?
Water? I'm afraid I just have some water for this call, but actually I do drink ginger tea quite a lot. I'm slightly addicted
so good. But I'll tell you what's washing over me more than the ginger is this is 60 years ago. We're celebrating the 60th anniversary of James Bond right now, and to think that she had her 10-year anniversary 60 years ago, not to mention Dr. No, it sort of boggles the mind. It's not 6 months or 6 years ago, 60 years ago.
Yeah, and I was looking at our new Prime Minister, barely been in a couple of weeks. She was born in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, as was her predecessor, So the last few Prime Ministers have all been born in her era. Only one Prime Minister in the 21st century was born in the time of her father. So again, it shows the length of reign. We haven't had that many times in our history. Queen Victoria did have it when she passed away. The majority of the population had only known her, and there may have been a couple of times in the medieval era, but it is phenomenal. Normally, it is a generational reign.
I have a very American question to ask you, to
Okay.
which you may even not even know the answer, but that's it's fine if you don't, because people should know we did not prepare this.
No.
This is a comfortable conversation, like we're at an English pub. Um, does she need to? Is it mandated to have the Queen have a picture taken with her crown on?
Oh, I guess it's become conventional. And often we're going off convention, tradition. That's what guides our constitution, right? So we're one of the few
Yeah,
countries in the world with no written constitution. We carry on doing what we feel we've always done.
right.
So she's had it done. Her father had it done. I believe her grandfather had it done. So it has been done. Therefore, it will probably carry on unless there's a sufficiently good reason to change it.
See, Thomas right now is thinking like, damn it, I had no idea he was going to throw zingers at me. What the heck is going on here? All right, these are very iconic images.
Yes. Yeah, so there's my cup, and it is the silver jubilee. There's not many jubilees in history, and funny enough, most of the jubilees have been Queen Elizabeth's, right? So the jubilee is a bit like a wedding anniversary, right? The big numbers,
Uh,
your 25th, your 50th, and so
yes, of
on.
course.
And this was, I think, the big one, the Silver Jubilee, which happens to be the same year that The Spy Who Loved Me comes out. And I was thinking about this because, of course, The Spy Who Loves Me has that parachute with a Union flag. And I was thinking, a lot of Bond films do have British iconography. Then I was thinking the previous film, The Man with the Golden Gun, you didn't have overt Union Jacks all over the place in that film. The subsequent film, Moonraker, I think got quite a few American flags as opposed to ours. It's all about space rockets and so on. So this does stand out from the previous film and the subsequent film of having that imagery in it, and I don't think it's a coincidence.
So you proactively answered my question, which is, do you think the filmmakers decided it's a silver jubilee? And
Mm,
when there is a jubilee, I mean, we just experienced one. There is a lot of excitement and presence, not just in your world, but all around the world. So, do you think this was something to kind of draw it in then?
I think they saw it coming. I think they wanted to hit
Yeah.
that patriotic note because it does stand out. Not many of the Roger Moore films really do this, and it has been described in some academic papers as looking at it as almost a bit of a pastiche, right? So with Sean Connery's Bond, it was very punchy King and Country. Sorry, Queen and Country. As you see, I make the live slips. Whereas Roger Moore, it could be almost a pastiche of England, but I need you, so does England. Was it done slightly tongue in cheek?
Yeah.
So again, that does vary, and of course, right back to say Skyfall, where you do get the strong patriotic vibes there.
And Thomas, I got to tell you, you already know this. This was my first Bond movie. I was old enough clearly to see this and be conscious of it. But I heard when this premiered in London, for example, people, when they saw the parachute, people stood up and applauded. And I think it's safe to say that most British citizens are usually very refined, proper
Mm,
people, a slight smattering of applause. But to get up and cheer, that had to be
yeah,
something.
yeah. I've only seen people kind of react like that a few times in the cinema. One of them, you may remember a film called The King's Speech about the
Oh,
Queen's
yes. Oh,
father
I
a little
love that.
while ago. So I went to see that with my nana, who remembers the King's Speech the first time round when it was live. And I was going, I guess it may have been a showing the time of day where a lot of the audience did remember it or had strong kind of memories of the Queen's father. And at the end of that, people did stand up and applaud. So I've very rarely seen it.
I love it. Okay. What do we have here?
Yeah. So it's worth saying that obviously there's a huge national celebration of the Queen, but there you do have the number one single that couldn't be the number one, which was the Sex Pistols' "God Save the Queen." So that did come out in that year, and it's kind of a powerful image. It was, the time of punk in the, I guess, counterculture movement. So it's just an iconic image. It wasn't, I say, it was taken off the charts, I think, that week.
Would this have offended a typical British citizen?
I think most people would have walked on and not cared one way or the other. There may have been passionate people involved on either side of the spectrum, but I think the great majority of people would get on with their daily lives. I haven't.
Move along. Move along.
Yes, exactly. Another thing, kids.
Now I love this because this next image, do you think they beg and borrowed from, I mean, if I look at this and then I
Yeah.
look at this, it's undeniably close.
Absolutely. So the first time I watched it, that was my assumption that this was supposed to be a reference to it, putting Judi Dench into that frame. There's a few points in the frame where, she is the matriarchal figure. It does seem that she's representing the country in that kind of way.
I love that. Oh, what a connection. All right, 2012, talk to me.
Well, so it was quite a year kind of patriotically, aside from kind of Britain winning at all kinds of sports. I mean, I have to mention I'm in Yorkshire. It's a place, I guess in some ways it's like there are some people from America and there's some people from Texas, right? If you ask a Texan where they're from, they very rarely say, I'm from America. They always say, I'm from Texas.
Yes,
So people
true.
from Yorkshire are much the same. Like if you ask them where they're from, they won't say England, they'll say, I'm from Yorkshire. There was a point in the London Olympics where in the top 10 of medals, Yorkshire was there by itself.
Oh my
If
gosh.
you removed all the other English. So, I mean, I was here at the time. It was a huge, huge moment, right? That summer for all of us. The Diamond Jubilee, again, such a rare occasion. The London Olympics opening ceremony, which again had the Queen and James Bond, and then the Skyfall premiere. So we had those three big hits, aside from, I believe, there was some success in tennis as well. I'd say these were three really big occasions, and the UK did reach a high point, I think, of patriotism.
We obviously know the popularity of Bond here is, I would say, shadowed by the popularity in the UK. I mean, it's huge. It's almost religious and family oriented, James Bond. Do you know, Thomas, have you heard if the monarchy, I know we have an upcoming slide to discuss this, but if the monarchy, including Queen Elizabeth II, was always a huge Bond fan, is that why she said yes to this very unique showing at the Olympics?
Possibly. Now, the royal family normally don't comment on what books they read or what kind of pastimes they're getting involved with. It's not something that they're very open about. We don't know what they watch on
Hmm.
television. We do know that she likes jigsaws. The late Queen loved jigsaws, and that she had her own jigsaw maker. But again, we get these arcane comments from time to time. We don't know exactly what they're watching, but of course they go to all the premieres. We have seen them kind of visiting sets, but we can't know for sure. They do have a certain element of private life, although I must say, not very much.
Yeah, and we're going to get to something in a second where
Mm.
even when they're trying to be private or not show what their interests are, they do show their hand a little bit. Oh, well, we certainly know who this is. Woo, that
Yes.
outfit.
Yes, yes. So during the Jubilee, I think she was on top of a building with hula hoops for hours. And uh, I did have somebody ask me, do you think she was invited or did you just think she just went? She just did it?
That's so Grace Jones. If she just showed up and said, "Give me that mic,"
Who would say no?
I'd be afraid to say no. She would drop kick me like a soccer ball or football.
Yeah, this was the only way for me in which No Time to Die could have been better if it actually had a cameo from Grace Jones, as they did talk about. I believe in the Jamaica
I was
bar.
going to say, wasn't that supposed to happen, and there was some sort of falling out or something? Or
She wanted a bigger role, I think, which I couldn't have objected to. So no, I don't know whether she was supposed to have dialogue or not, but I don't think it was enough for her to get out of bed. So.
I think she would have made like a fantastic female Jaws villain,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Like a henchman type thing, which kind of like a reprisal role. But I mean, who knows if Mayday died? Did she blow up? Did she not?
I
I
didn't
don't
see a
know.
body, so
Yeah, we are so off the rails. Before we started recording this, Thomas is like, "If I go down this road, pull me back." And now I'm going down the road. So close.
Grace Jones, it's always worth talking about.
She's always a great diversion. But we're back to the Queen. Look at this. I love this commercial.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, so this was for the Platinum Jubilee, and apparently, as surprised as we all were, nobody was more surprised than her family. She was very good at keeping things to herself, getting involved with things, and none of them knew. This is
None
one
of
thing
them
we
knew.
do know.
So they saw this when the public saw it then.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
insane.
it's also been said that, for example, when it was James Bond and the Queen, that they didn't, the Olympics people didn't ask for her to do it. They asked, "Can we film in Buckingham Palace?" And she said, "If I'm in it." She's said to have loved drama as a child and so on.
By the way, I remember when she pulled the sandwich out and the smile. And I don't know how it is over there, but over here, it's kind of like the Queen was notorious for not always smiling,
Yeah.
maybe having a little bit of a grimace on her
Mm,
face. But that smile just fills the entire screen.
yes. It's a lovely, lovely segment. And as I mentioned there, the voice of Paddington Bear is, of course, Ben Whishaw. So we have
More Bond
our crucial
connections.
Bond connection. Yeah.
Unbelievable. All right. Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, so that castle is Balmoral. So that is kind of the Queen's one of her private residences up in Scotland. So that's where she spent much time as a child, where she spent much time with her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, and where she ultimately returned, and is where she passed away. But I just have it side by side. It was pointed out to me, and has been mentioned. I think a few people have mentioned this, that Skyfall ends with a matriarchal figure going to a Scottish estate and finding her rest there, and of course the Queen going there to Balmoral as her final visit.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
it does suddenly give a new dimension.
It does. That's not a place you can go and visit. That's obviously private.
No, no, I mean you might have heard about the American tourist who went round there, in the area, and he was walking along and met the Queen and her policeman, and didn't recognise her, and said, it said the Queen is around here. Have you ever met her? And the Queen replied, I haven't, but he has. And so the man went to talk
Oh
to the
my
policeman.
gosh.
And so he had his photograph taken with the policeman and then with the Queen. And there's always the question of when he went home, did anyone realize who he had met?
That's insanity. Oh my gosh. Well, it wasn't me. Oh, talk to us about this. Because you were there, weren't you?
I was at the Mall, yeah. So at the Queen's state funeral, I went down to the Mall. So that's the long road leading to Buckingham Palace. This is the long walk, I believe, going to Windsor Castle. So the funeral procession went across here, but yeah, my wife and I went down to watch the funeral procession in person, and of course, huge numbers did. Tens of thousands went down to pay their respects as she lay in state, waiting anything from 9 hours to 14 hours. I've heard, um, and for the most part, regardless of people's status, for example, their wealth, their fame. David Beckham
I saw that.
famously queued for 9 hours.
Wow.
Same queue as everybody else, perhaps more expensively dressed, but he followed the same rules as everybody else, and it's been much commented upon in papers that I've seen around the world, in China and in Africa, of how, I say, regardless of his wealth and status, he queued with everybody else.
Thomas, I don't mean to get all Barbara Walters on you, but talk to me as somebody who has been in a geography that has this monarchy. Queen Elizabeth II as a steady state seemed to always be around for generations. Even here in the United States, my comment around it was whatever was happening politically, wars, disconnects, inflation, trials and tribulations, as strange as it sounds as an American citizen, there was always the monarchy that, although they would evolve, it was very slow. So it would seem like there's something warm and comfortable about that. It's like Bond. You could always
Mm.
count on Bond. You could always count on one number. You could always count on Queen Elizabeth II being around. When you're here amongst the throng, is there a shared melancholy? Are you
Mm.
looking back fondly on things? I mean, what is the emotion behind it?
All I can say, it was pregnant with emotion. A huge number of people there were very evidently former servicemen, right? And in the services, you serve the crown, right? You don't serve a politician. You serve very much the crown. So of course, I spent 3 years with a university Royal Naval Unit. My father was a career Army officer. His father was a career Army officer, and all of us under the same queen. So you have three generations of men serving the same individual. So it is momentous, and you felt, I say, you felt the history with you.
That's
And of
amazing.
course,
No, I mean it's so huge, and it's a part of history. But listen, we've got to look forward. So I
mm.
love talk to us about the different images that are seen here.
Yeah, so I couldn't resist finding these pictures from the filming of The Living Daylights. So, of course, this is when Charles visited the set with the late Princess of Wales, and she was given one of those, sugar glass bottles to smash over his head. One of them, I can't remember which, was given the button for the explosive, the rocket to go out of the Brixton briefcase, the ghetto blaster.
The Kiddo
Uh,
Blaster, yeah, for the Americans.
Yes, yes. And of course, Prince Charles visiting the set of No Time to Die. I just thought these images showing that they are invited to see the making of it. It is a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes our showcase to the world, right? We see it, for example, with a number of British brands going into Bond, right? It is our shop window. This is what we produce.
That's true. So, all right, I have some big questions here
Mm,
because one of the things that I'm dying to find out is, and I wanted to ask you specifically. First of all, we should tell everybody these are probably going to be they are going to be opinions, your
mm,
opinion, but I want your opinion. Um, Queen Elizabeth II, it's kind of undeniable. I'm sure that she had her dissenters. Of course, every political figure, even the monarchy, does. But it seemed to me, at least over here, that the majority of the world, and certainly your particular geography, were supporters or had some sort of affection or nostalgia, etc. King Charles,
mm.
it's his world now. How is he? How is he looked upon? Does it depend on who you ask, or what are people? Yeah, you never shy away from these things, so I thought I would
No,
ask.
no. I do think there's an element of generations, right? So people from different generations have slightly different takes. I might take a step even further back and say we have been here once before, right? So Queen Victoria reigned for so long people could scarcely remember another. Her son had a very entertaining youth, and became king as an old man. But of course, it gave us a very different era, and he was loved as a king. When he became king, he was, I don't know how else to put it, a very kingly king. Being
Hmm.
kingly seems to be a very peculiar thing that it might not depend on intelligence, or it might not depend on like activity. It seems to be a very different adjective, being kingly. But the man grew into it, and I can see King Charles now doing much the same thing, as we all adjust.
Speaking of adjustment, right? I know it's so hard to get the titles and everything connected. It's interesting too because maybe this is just psychological.
Mm,
I've always seen when he was Prince Charles as obviously somebody that was part of the monarchy, but where I would see him in the news is well wishing, sort
mm,
of going to things, even No Time to Dissect, shaking hands, almost being kind of a solid foundation as opposed to a political figure, somebody
mm.
who would connect the dots and make big decisions. There was a great meme that I saw. I don't think it was unkind. I think it was just kind of tongue in cheek, where it showed a fake newspaper saying, man in his 70s finally gets a job or
Yes.
something like that. But here's the psychological thing, and you tell me how you reacted. When you put that king title, you go from prince to king. For
Mhm.
some reason, when I look at King Charles now, I think stately.
Mm.
Like he's going to have an interesting rule. And I almost like, damn it, like the title's kind of getting to me. It's like CEO versus president or president versus vice president. There's just this weird layer of respect that suddenly occurs. Am I crazy?
No, no. I mean, your comparison to president is interesting because I remember a gentleman who met Nixon, but when he was vice president. And he said, well, it was just disappointing because we'd expect the president got the vice president. Then, of course, Nixon becomes president. So we're like, are you excited that you met the man who was president? He was like, no, I want to meet him again. Now he is president. I found it really interesting. Um, I think now, I say King Charles, he is king, and I think he will become the role very much. One very minor Bond connection, if we're up for it,
Yeah.
is that when he was given his title, Prince of Wales, you have the royal warrants, right? So the royal wants go back a long way. You see it on all kinds of products by appointment to the Queen, by appointment
Yeah.
to him. His first one was actually to Turnbull and Asser, the shirt maker and time maker.
Did that just happen then? It must have just happened.
No, sorry, that first one when he became Prince of Wales. So it's a long time ago now.
Oh, okay. Got it. Wow.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting, right? So before the days of, say, trading standards or being able to sue a company for not doing the right thing, this is a mark of quality, right? So
How
by appointment.
does that happen? I know it's a bit of a diverge, but
Yeah.
is there some sort of royal decree that says, Bennett and Wench, I now dub you, how does that go?
Yeah, there's a process involved and there are committees involved, but it's guided ultimately by the prince or king guiding it. So he specifically gave it as it was kind of high quality craftsmanship, it's long lasting. And you mentioned kind of the political role. Prince Charles, as a young man, did come out with political views, and it did cause some discomfort for some that he spoke, for example, on architecture, he spoke on the environment, and actually a lot of things, as Prince Harry said in an interview recently, a lot of things that seemed very shocking then and are mainstream now. For example, organic farming, which seems pretty mainstream to get organic food, but he was one of the early people pushing for this. He has also criticized governments directly in confidential letters, but letters that were then revealed under freedom of information laws. And actually, I think a lot of people, once they saw them, kind of relieved. Like, good. He's writing the letters that should be written to government ministers. They're ignoring an issue that should not be ignored. So I think a lot of people thought better of him, actually, once it was revealed what they were. So
all right. So I've got a forecast. We're gonna get out the crystal ball here. It's not a gypsy camp fight. It's just a crystal ball. Everybody relax. But we're gonna rub it a little bit, and we're gonna talk about Bond 26 because, as a Brit, as obviously there's been this transition now. I began to think about certain things like, well, if we see a stack of money in the new Bond film and it takes place in present day in the UK, we're going to see King Charles on it and not Queen Elizabeth II, and things like even on His Majesty's Secret Service. Like, what does that do? Does it lose some of the cachet, or is it just the inevitability of time?
For me, it is that inevitability. It will take 2 years because it's every aspect, right? So whether it's the stamps on our letters, whether it's, for example, our prosecuting lawyers, all my life have been QCs, they're Queen's Counsel, whereas they'll be King's Counsel as they once were. Policemen's helmets will change. We have the ER2 for Elizabeth II Regina, and it will change to Charles Rex 3. So we'll see all kinds of aspects of public life having these little bits of adjustment, and it is a new era. But just like at the beginning of Bond, it was a new, fresh era, we suddenly enter another new era. So in many ways, the more it changes, the more we go back to our roots.
Unbelievable. Well, first of all, thank you for making more sense of this to this humble American. I'm sure you did that to all of our viewers. Talk to us a little bit, just to kind of round this out, about your podcast, because we're going to put the link below, but this doesn't need to be a one and done for people. I mean, you kind of do immerse people, simmer them in your particular culture, but tell us a little bit about it.
Certainly, thank you. So I've been talking about British culture, say, in my academic work and in life, right? So I spent, 7 years in Turkish Cyprus, 6 years in China, I spent a bit of time in America, and people often do ask me questions about Britain and what is Britishness. And so I'd say, if anything, my podcast is guided by this one question: what is Britishness? And anything that can help me answer that, whether it's an interview with someone, whether it's a deep dive into a topic, or just a day-to-day, right? A slice of life from a little Yorkshire village, how life is actually led. Anything that can help me answer that question, I have a go.
And you got to listen to Thomas play that pan flute or whatever. What is that flute that I keep hearing at the beginning? What is that?
It is a regular flute. It's my flute. It's me playing.
See, I was actually joking. That really is you playing?
Yeah, I play the flute, and I don't know if it's my best, but anyway, I was trying to play Lily Bolero, which is it's a traditional British Army song. It's a very important.
Dude, you just took the podcast from here to off the screen. That is so amazing. I didn't even know that was you.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm classically trained flautist, not to a very high level, but I can sing opera too. I've been taken to another country to sing opera, but I've decided to not put that out there yet. I've got to
Dude,
save your ears.
you're like the real deal. But listen, Thomas, thank you so much. By the way, I want to have you back on in the future to talk about kind of a part two to something Calvin and I did. The difference between U.S. Bond fans and British Bond fans.
Oh
And I
wow,
think you
okay.
would be perfect at that. You up for it?
Yes, yes. I loved your one with Calvin, actually. Yeah, I'd love to join in.
We have to have a second representation. But listen, in the meantime, Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank
Links
you.
are below to find this man. You can follow him on Instagram at Fleming Never Dies, Albion Never Dies, the podcast. Thomas is a great guy. You got a little bit of fashion, you got a little bit of culture, you got a good looking man right here. It's all good stuff. And in the meantime, this has been David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience. We'll see you all real soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond Experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.